Welcome to the Healing Pain Podcast with Dr. Joe Tatta. Each week, we interview top experts in physical therapy, pain science, and integrative pain care. You'll learn the most up-to-date information for treating and reversing persistent pain. This podcast is for educational purposes only and not intended to be used as personalized medical advice. And now, here's your host, Dr. Joe Tatta.
Hey there, friend. Welcome to this week's episode of the Healing Pain Podcast. It's great to have you here. On this week's episode, we're discussing how to improve doctor of physical therapy student wellness through the implementation of lifestyle medicine approaches in the physical therapy curriculum. My guests this week are Dr. Tessa Wells and Dr. Betsy Becker. Both are physical therapy educators at the University of Nebraska Medical Center in Kearney, Nebraska. Dr. Tessa Wells holds the assistant professor and the assistant director of clinical education in the Department of Physical Therapy. And Dr. Betsy Becker is an associate professor. She's the program director, and she's also the chair of the Department of Health and Rehabilitation Sciences. On today's episode, we discuss what the University of Nebraska Doctor of Physical Therapy program is doing with regard to student wellness and how they are integrating lifestyle medicine into the Doctor of Physical Therapy curriculum. We'll share some preliminary results from the first cohort that has completed this curriculum, and there'll be some great takeaways for the broader community of physical therapy education or physical therapy practice if you're interested in learning and implementing integrative and lifestyle medicine into PT practice. If you are a physical therapist in clinical practice, or maybe you are a DPT educator and you're looking for a solid evidence-based resource on integrative and lifestyle medicine and physical therapy, make sure to check out the new textbook called Integrative and Lifestyle Medicine in Physical Therapy, a guide to primary care, health promotion, and disease prevention. That textbook was edited by me and another physical therapist, Dr. Junior Garner, and we have over 39 contributors who are all physical therapy clinicians and educators who contributed to it. You can find that online by going to optp.com, or if you are outside of the United States, you can also find that on Amazon. Just go to Amazon and just type in Integrative and Lifestyle Medicine and Physical Therapy. I believe you can purchase it as a textbook in certain countries, or you can purchase it as an ebook for an immediate and direct download. Okay, without further ado, let's begin and let's meet Dr. Tessa Wells and Dr. Betsy Becker and learn about some of the really innovative and interesting things they're doing inside the DPT curriculum with regard to integrative and lifestyle medicine. Hi there, Tessa. Hi, Betsy. Welcome to this week's episode of the Healing Pain Podcast. It's great to have you here.
Thanks, Joe. It's great to be here. Thanks for having us.
I agree. It's really great to visit. Hello, Joe.
Great. I always love having, most of my episodes are one-on-one. I love bringing people together, especially when people have worked on new and innovative projects, especially within the field of physical therapy, and especially on this topic of lifestyle medicine, which I think fits so well both in DPT education as well as physical therapist practice. Tessa, you and I met at the ELC conference a couple months ago, and you had a great poster that I stopped at, and I saw just lifestyle medicine kind of plastered across it, and I was really excited to speak with you and invite you on. So it's great to speak with both of you today, but tell me how kind of this project got started. What was the impetus to start to explore this area?
Sure. So we really wanted to look at the student experience overall, and we know that with the quadruple aim, right, that well students become well practitioners who can then take care of and make good impacts on their patients and clients' lives. So that's kind of sort of how it got started, and I'll let Betsy talk a little bit about kind of what that looks like at UNMC. So.
Yeah, well, we know that the student experience is an ideal location to learn, to experiment with learning, lifelong learning, experimenting with wellness behaviors, and that's embedded in the literature. And the higher ed environment really provides those new opportunities for socialization, exposure to diverse viewpoints, challenging someone's personal beliefs and resources. So students enter this environment equipped with various capacities to deal with those new challenges, new information, both academically and socially. So we adopted that integrated approach to address the needs of our current students both on a personal level, well-being and first-year courses. And we also designed subsequent courses to meet the needs of the professional education program. And so we designed a project to really broaden the concept of lifestyle medicine to include network support system connections, psychological resilience and capacity. And then we also are working with our university partners across the campus to make sure that we have supports in place for a variety of needs of the students, really during a variety of time points across their training.
Lots of really good, important topics there. And I want to kind of just piece out the timeline a little bit, because wellness, especially within physical therapy, has become very popular over the last year, in the year 2022, and maybe a little bit even in 2021, as we all faced a pandemic. But it sounds like all of you started planning this potentially even before then. So you're kind of ahead of the curve on this in some way.
Well, yes, we could have done without the pandemic, but we did. We implemented our curricular interventions to promote student wellness and the professional formation in the fall of 2019. So we were in a place where we were implementing these things to prepare students, regardless of whether there was a pandemic. And we're seeing good evidence that our interventions are mattering and making a difference. And we're also seeing some differences between the students who entered after COVID as well as before, which is going to be some interesting findings in our study.
And it also sounds to me like there's somewhat, or you've created somewhat of a curricular thread to weave this information in and out of, which I think is great, because so often when something new pops up in, let's say, CAPT requirements, like nutrition, what winds up happening is there's, a 30-minute lecture that's embedded within a PT program, and people take it, they're interested, and then they kind of forget about it. But it sounds like you really have started to weave this through the entire DPT curriculum for a student in some way.
Yeah. And so the way that we're doing that is by using lifestyle medicine thread throughout the curriculum, as well as kind of situating it within the social ecological model, where you're really thinking about individual and relationship, and then how that then extends into the community and into society. So we have the students really start by looking at wellness in lifestyle medicine, using those pillars as kind of our anchor point, and then saying, okay, where am I at within this? How am I doing in my physical activity? How am I doing in my stress management and my healthy diet? And then they're able to take that and really self-assess, think about behavior change that they may need to work on for themselves, and then how they might then extrapolate that and work on that with a client, and then thinking about down the road, the community integration and how can we really take this to prevention standpoint in society. So it goes from self to others to community, and we work that all the way across the curriculum.
So all 6 pillars are somewhere within that.
Mm-hmm.
And is this running, like, for example, certain programs have maybe 1 or 2 courses dedicated to health and wellness promotion? Is your curricular set up like that, or is it more just like a thread throughout?
Yeah, so it's a thread throughout, and then it culminates with a prevention and wellness course at the end of the curriculum, so that they really have a nice trajectory into practice, and they hit their final clinical education experiences and are able to really put these things into practice that we've been talking about, and they've been working on those skills all the way through.
And you mentioned
Add to that.
Go ahead, Betsy.
I would add to that, right? So we have the curricular threads, and it's embedded in the social ecological model. But it's not just the student's responsibility to be well, and it's not just the faculty's responsibility to teach the students about being well or patients' wellness. So we needed institutional support. So we took a good hard look at, what are our policies? Do we need to modify policies to be more student-centered to support some of these things that we're teaching? So we revised admission policies. We looked at attendance policies. What is our tutoring? What about progression through the program and remediation? And so we wanted to make sure that from, the bottom up and the top down, that we really were living out what we were trying to explore and teach.
So everyone is on board with this, basically, right?
Absolutely.
And so how many cohorts have you taken through this so far? And tell us some of the results that you're starting to see.
Right. So it's a longitudinal study. And so we're comparing our outcomes at different times. So at matriculation, start of the program, halfway through, which would be about a year and a half later, and then 3 years later after starting would be at the time of graduation. So we're looking at it across the curriculum, and we're analyzing measures of wellness, such as psychological capital, which is hope and resilience and confidence and optimism with a standardized tool. We're looking at the social capital and measuring connections with others for a sense of belonging. And we're looking at 5-factor wellness inventory. So that's an inventory to identify central factors to healthy living, which align with the lifestyle medicine pillars. And so those wellness scores are composed of domains where the acceptance of personal responsibility and choice have positive outcomes on the well-being. So our initial study findings is we only have 2.5 years of data for a 4-year study. So we're just getting about halfway through, but we're showing higher wellness scores in several domains in the cohorts matriculating after COVID really started compared to before, which we think is so interesting because it's possible that it could indicate that those students entering professional school were more prepared in terms of healthy living. Possibly there was a lot of public health news around COVID. And our study really is showing so far that components of student wellness are improving in part to our curriculum interventions and policy changes that are supporting wellness. And these are really important, especially given that our curriculum was not delivered as intended at first because of the directed health measures beginning in 2020. So we've got some work to do in terms of analyzing that data for 4 years. And we're really looking at the connections among students too. Do students connect with other students who are well, and what does that look like long term? So I can see it being a much longer study than 4 years.
So if I can just ask you maybe 1 or 2 questions, in some of the data you're starting to collect and the outcome measures that you're using, some of them sounds like are looking at maybe common physical health measures. And nowadays, people are also interested in some of the more mental well-being measures. Which part of how is some of the early data starting to look with regard to the mental well-being measures? Because that's a real important topic right now in DPT education.
I'm not sure we have it classified as mental well-being. So we're talking about those lifestyle factor or lifestyle medicine pillars. So we're really using gold standard tools that are out there, and so it's looking at that resilience and coping, and so I think that those pieces are not the physical activity piece by design. That's embedded in our curriculum, of course, but we know that these are skills that help people, as a profession, as a healthy, ready for the workforce. Perhaps it could improve patient care in a professional sense. If you're well yourself, you're likely to take better care of yourself and have better outcomes as a student. That's kind of a reach. But I think that's where we're going with our outcome measures here.
I think the resilience factor and the positive coping really fits well with a mental well-being approach. And I know that I totally agree. Like if you can promote some of these lifestyle behaviors early in their career, so to speak, then hopefully this will carry through as you're starting to see. What are some of the takeaways for the broader community, whether it's the broader physical therapy community or the broader community of PTs in practice?
That's a good question. I think we've gained a better understanding of student experiences and have really developed programming to enhance wellness. So I think the message there is this can be done, but that you have to have a team behind you and those institutional supports. We're so lucky at our institution to have administration on board with that and able to make some of these changes. So I think that's one piece that's important, is that we know what their experiences are and have developed this ability to enhance their wellness. And we're seeing that even students who have come in with that higher wellness, Betsy alluded to that earlier about those differences in classes, that the ones that came in before and then after COVID, the ones that came in after COVID had higher wellness. Well, those scores actually still increased. So even if students are doing pretty good, if we're doing a good job of purposefully addressing these things, they can still improve, which is exciting to know. And we're working on preparing these students for a long-term career in PT. And so we know that if our providers aren't well, it's difficult for them to provide good care for our patients. So hopefully that will have the ripple effect that we're intending, right? And then just being ready to be that student of the future. What does that look like? If we're providing them with good skills now, they should be well positioned to jump into that role in the future. And then really, I guess we don't know these outcomes yet, right? We're not to that point in our data analysis and even in the collection of data in the study, but thinking about outcomes beyond graduation, right? We care about the students as practitioners afterwards. So what does that look like for employment? What does that look like for board rate, licensure rates, those types of things, and just thinking about additional measures of success within programs. So I think those are things that we can look at and apply.
Betsy, I know some of this fits into a previous scholarly agenda that you worked on. I believe it was in some of your PhD work that you have published, and I believe in some of it you even received an award for it, which is great. How does it continue to fit in with the work you've done already? And what would your maybe words of wisdom and encouragement be for other DPT programs who are listening to this and saying, oh, this might be something interesting to explore, and how do we start to kind of massage this in?
Right. Well, I think one of our goals is to share our information. How can we take what we've done here and share it with other DPT programs, and how can they modify it and help us learn? So I think that's a really collaborative future I see. Yes, my work has focused on social network analysis. So looking at how individuals connect with each other and what do those connections look like. So certainly you can count the number of people in a network, but we know that there's a lot that goes on between those connections. And if one person adds to the group or that network, the whole group is better. And so I think that's the premise here is how do connections develop? How can they become stronger and build trust and cohesion and bridge and be a friend of a friend of a friend? So there's a lot to be studied. And I think those connections really start to happen at the DPT training level. Mm-hmm. When I did my work and what I've published is some of the connections that I talked with when I was interviewing faculty members about their connections, they started back in DPT programs. So we know it's a very formative time where lifelong connections are built. And so we can measure that now. We have software and data analysis to measure connections beyond the count. How strong, how many connections, how many people are connected to other people who are similar. And so it was a really nice link to think about my work studying faculty connections, to think about what students are doing at the very beginning of their career as a physical therapist.
It definitely fits in really well with the lifestyle medicine precept of social connection, right?
Right. We do. We know that people who are connected with others have support, and that's part of a coping mechanism. When life gets challenging, school gets challenging, we rely on each other for support and cohesion and motivation. And whether that support comes from somebody in your family or somebody who's a friend or your classmate, we need support in many different ways.
Tessa, what was some of the feedback that you received at the Educational Leadership Conference with your poster? Because oftentimes at that conference in particular, there are educators or maybe new educators that are looking for a scholarly agenda to maybe start to work toward as part of their EdD or their PhD, or maybe they're a full-time faculty member that's looking for something new.
Sure. Yeah, we actually had a lot of interest in our work, which is exciting to hear. We're not the only people who have implemented lifestyle medicine into our curriculum by any means. There's lots of people out there who are doing this, but I think we're doing it in a new and innovative way where we're really thinking about our students as future providers. And so I think there's some opportunity to hopefully collaborate with schools and think about how might be able to implement some of these things across curricula and really have a broader pool of students to look at, hopefully, and just being able to really think about how we implemented lifestyle medicine and whole person wellness as a thread throughout our curriculum was also something that was very interesting. And made it seem very doable instead of, like you said earlier, those 30-minute lectures on nutrition, and we've checked that box for CAPTIA requirements. It's deeper than that, and it should be deeper than that to allow our students to really make changes when they're out in the workforce.
Yeah, and it sounds like a component of this at some point is more experiential. So it's less didactic and more experiential for the student.
Yeah, so in the terminal pieces of the curriculum, we have them discuss how they might go out and implement a community-based prevention and wellness program. And so in my role as Assistant Director of Clinical Education, I've been able to kind of bring those things together and have them look at, okay, I'm going to this community for my terminal clinical experience. What does that community look like? Where are some places that I might be able to pull in wellness? How can I make that impact in that community that I'm going to? So it's been a good thing, I think, for them to put those skills into practice for sure.
And have you all been thinking, I know you're halfway there, so to speak, but have you all been thinking about maybe a next step or a second phase to this research?
Start with that one. Yes, we're always thinking about the next phase. And so that's great that you're asking this question. First, we would like to complete the study that we have intended, right? So that's of course our next step, and disseminate the information. It's important to share what we find and contribute to the literature and this body of literature. And, we're not unique in physical therapy that we're having this conversation, but how can our interprofessional partners across the healthcare team benefit from some of the things that we're studying here too? So I think that's probably a big next step. Tessa, I think you have some other ideas. Do you want to share what those might be?
Sure. So I kind of talked about this a little bit with Joe's question about that reaction from ELC, but just being able to partner with other institutions would be wonderful to be able to really broaden the scope of this and the reach of this. And really, this goes beyond PT, right? This could have impact on other healthcare professions as we're thinking about team in providing care. And so we really just want to be able to take that on that next step. So.
Well, it's been great speaking with both of you. I'm excited to hear that more and more DPT programs are really embracing lifestyle medicine in various ways. I mean, I think, both of you and obviously the University of Nebraska are probably ahead of the curve a little bit because it's quite deeply entrenched in your curriculum, which is great, and you're collecting the data, which is excellent. If people want to reach out to you and learn more about your study or what you're doing, how can they do that?
They can reach out either through our website and get our contact information that way, or I'm on Twitter at Tessa Wells PT, so you can reach out that way as well. And yeah, we would love to talk and collaborate. So.
I agree. We are very interested in hearing other people's experiences. And yes, our website's a great spot. My Twitter is BJBECKO. BJ Becko is the Twitter handle. I also do a little email here and there. So if somebody would like to email me, I'm happy to read your email and respond. That email address is betsyj.becker@unmc.edu. So we look forward to hearing from the audience today.
Excellent. So, of course, you can reach Dr. Tessa Wells and Dr. Betsy Becker at the University of Nebraska Medical Center in the DPT or Doctor of Physical Therapy program there. All the links that they just mentioned will be on the show notes at the Integrated Pain Science Institute, or you can go directly to the University of Nebraska Medical Center's physical therapy program website and find them. They'd love to hear from you and collaborate with you on implementing lifestyle medicine into the DPT curricula. Make sure you share this information with your friends and colleagues, especially physical therapists interested in health promotion, integrative and lifestyle medicine in physical therapy. Reach out to me on social media. Of course, I am mostly on Instagram. You can reach me at my handle at drjoetatta.com. It's been a pleasure speaking with you this week, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Healing Pain Podcast with Dr. Joe Tatta. To subscribe to the podcast and learn more, visit integrativepainscienceinstitute.com. That's integrativepainscienceinstitute.com. Sign up to receive weekly updates, leave a review on iTunes, and share this episode with your friends.